There is a place where the strongest men go to become stronger, a place where the greatest ideas are born, a place where clarity cuts through confusion like light through darkness, a place where power accumulates, multiplies, and transforms into something unstoppable. That place is not a factory. It's not a lecture hall. It's not a meeting room. It's solitude. And if you have been running from it, if you've been filling every silent moment with idle conversation, every empty hour with social obligations, every quiet space with other people's voices, you have been running from the very thing that could transform you. Because here's a truth that cuts against everything society teaches you. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is power. And the man who learns to sit alone with his thoughts, who can endure the silence without reaching for distraction, who can face himself without interruption, that man becomes dangerous, not to others, to mediocrity, to weakness, to the limits others accept. He becomes someone the world cannot control, because he has learned to control himself in the one place it matters most, in the quiet. Look around you. People are terrified of being alone. They wake up and immediately seek company. They fill every moment with newspapers, radio broadcasts, social gatherings, constant activity. They surround themselves with continuous noise, constant stimulation, constant company, not because they enjoy it, but because they're afraid of what happens when it stops. They're afraid of the silence. They're afraid of their own thoughts. They're afraid to face themselves without a crowd, without an audience, without distraction. And that fear is destroying them, because solitude is where you meet the real you, not the performance you put on for society, not the mask you wear in public, not the version of yourself that seeks approval, the real you, raw, unfiltered, undistracted. And most people can't handle that encounter, so they run, they visit, they entertain, they surround themselves with noise that drowns out the voice they need to hear most, their own. But the strongest men in history, they didn't run from solitude. They sought it. They understood something that the masses never grasp. Power is built in private. Strength is forged in silence. And the mind that can function alone, that can think deeply without external stimulation, that can create without an audience, that mind becomes unstoppable. Let me show you the pattern. Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest leaders in history, spent hours alone, reading by candlelight, thinking, writing, refining his mind in solitude. The speeches that changed a nation were born in silence. Thomas Edison worked alone in his laboratory, often through the night, with nothing but his thoughts and his experiments. The inventions that changed the world came from a mind that learned to think in isolation. Henry Ford built his vision in the quiet of his workshop, away from the critics, away from the doubters, away from the noise. The automobile empire began in solitude. Andrew Carnegie spent hours in contemplation, in study, in strategic thinking, alone. He understood that the decisions that build empires require silence. Albert Einstein said his greatest breakthroughs came not from collaboration, but from long walks alone, where his mind could wander freely without interruption. Every spiritual leader, every philosopher, every visionary who changed the course of history, they all shared this practice: deliberate, sustained, powerful solitude. Not loneliness, solitude. The intentional choice to withdraw from the noise and meet yourself in the silence. And the mind that can function alone, that can think deeply without external stimulation, that can create without an audience, that mind becomes unstoppable. Let's be clear about something. Loneliness is the painful feeling of being disconnected, unwanted, isolated against your will. Solitude is the intentional practice of being alone to strengthen your mind, clarify your thoughts, and build your power. Loneliness drains you. Solitude charges you. Loneliness makes you desperate for company. Solitude makes you selective about company. Loneliness is something that happens to you. Solitude is something you choose, and the man who cannot tell the difference, who confuses the two, who thinks being alone is the same as being lonely, that man will never access the full power of his mind. Because solitude is not about isolation. It's about concentration. It's about removing external noise, so you can hear the internal signal. It's about stepping away from the crowd so you can think your own thoughts, form your own opinions, build your own vision. Most people's thoughts aren't even their own. They're borrowed, copied, absorbed from newspapers, from gossip, from public opinion. But in solitude, you discover what you actually think, what you actually want, what you are actually capable of. And that discovery changes everything. Let me tell you what happens when you practice true solitude. First, your mind clears. In the constant noise of daily life, your thoughts are scattered, fragmented, reactive. You're responding to demands, to other people's agendas, to the manufactured urgency of a busy world. But in solitude, the fog lifts. You begin to see clearly. You begin to think deeply. You begin to connect ideas that were invisible before. Your mind shifts from reactive to creative, from scattered to focused, from shallow to profound. This is where breakthrough thinking happens. Not in committee meetings, not in social gatherings, in the quiet space where your mind can actually work. Second, your self-awareness sharpens. Most people have no idea who they really are. They know the version of themselves they present to others. They know the role they play, but they don't know themselves. Solitude forces you to face reality, the things you've been avoiding, the patterns you've been ignoring, the truths you've been running from. It's uncomfortable. That's why most people avoid it. But that discomfort is growth. That confrontation is transformation. In solitude, you see your weaknesses clearly. And once you see them, you can fix them. You see your strengths clearly. And once you see them, you can maximize them. Third, your decision-making improves. How many bad decisions have you made because you were influenced by someone else's opinion? How many times have you done something because everyone else was doing it, only to regret it later? In solitude, you remove those voices. You hear your own intuition. You access your own wisdom. The decisions you make in solitude are the ones you trust, because they come from you, not from the crowd. Fourth, your creativity explodes. Creativity cannot flourish in chaos. It needs space. It needs silence. It needs time to wander, to explore, to connect ideas that others miss. Every great work of literature, every innovation, every original idea, it was born in solitude, not in crowded parlors, not in busy offices, in the quiet mind of someone who gave themselves permission to think without interruption. Fifth, your strength multiplies. There's a mental toughness that comes from being alone with yourself. When you can sit in silence without distraction, without entertainment, without someone else to validate you, you develop a core of inner strength that nothing can shake. You stop needing external approval. You stop fearing rejection. You stop seeking validation because you've learned to be enough on your own. And that self-sufficiency, that's power. Let me warn you, when you start practicing solitude, people will not understand. They'll think you're being unsociable. They'll think you're melancholy. They'll think something's wrong. Let them think what they want, because while they're drowning in noise, you're building power. While they're seeking validation from the crowd, you're finding truth in the silence. While they're scattered and reactive, you're focused and intentional. Also understand this. Solitude will show you things about yourself you might not want to see. It will expose your excuses, your fears, your weaknesses, your self-deceptions. Most people avoid solitude for exactly this reason. They don't want to face themselves. But you're not most people. You're someone who understands that temporary discomfort creates permanent strength. You're someone who would rather face the truth in private than perform a lie in public. You're someone who knows that the only way to build real power is to do the work no one sees. Here's the beautiful paradox of solitude. The more time you spend alone, the better you become with people. Because when you're not desperate for connection, you connect more authentically. When you're not seeking validation, you give more freely. When you're not running from yourself, you can be fully present with others. The man who is comfortable alone is magnetic in company. Because he doesn't need anything from you, he's complete on his own. So his presence is a gift, not a need. This is why the most powerful men often seem reserved, not because they're cold, but because they don't need your approval. They found something in solitude that the crowd can never provide: self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency is the foundation of all power. So from this moment forward, you are someone who seeks solitude, not because you're avoiding people, but because you're building yourself. Not because you're lonely, but because you're strategic. Not because you're weak, but because you understand where strength is forged. Say this to yourself with conviction: I am not afraid of silence. I seek it. I use it. I grow in it. Solitude is where I build my power, and I will not apologize for needing time alone. This is your new identity, not someone who runs from themselves, someone who meets themselves daily in the quiet and emerges stronger every time. Let me leave you with this. The noise of the world will always be there. The distractions will always call to you. The crowd will always want your attention. But the power you're looking for, it's not out there, it's in here, in the silence, in the solitude, in the space where no one else can reach you. That's where clarity lives. That's where strength grows. That's where your true self emerges. So give yourself permission to withdraw for a time. Close the door. Dismiss the visitors. Sit with yourself. Not because you're running away, but because you're running towards something greater, toward the version of you that isn't performing, isn't pretending, isn't seeking approval. The version of you that simply is, powerful, clear, unshakable. That version is waiting for you in the silence. Go find them. Solitude strengthens the mind, and a strong mind builds everything else. Now go, be alone, and become powerful.